What is up, you savages? This is the Protect Your Neck podcast, and I'm your host, Dan Tom. Analyst is work you can find over at MMA Junkie as well as oddscheckerus.com. But on this here program, the Protect Your Neck podcast, we break down high-level MMA. That's what we're going to do here today night whenever you're listening to this. It will be before the fight, I assume, because it's I'm recording this on a Sunday. It's a recap show, not a breakdown show. Going to be recapping UFC 266. Trying to do the recap shows after pay-per-views. I haven't been able to do them live on my show. I just haven't felt like organizing it, to be honest. I'm sure I could find a guest co-host, but you guys are just stuck with me today as I realize, you know what, it will make up for it because I will be guest co-host recapping this tomorrow on Southpaw podcast. So I will be leaving some goodies to talk about there. Real quick to that podcast feed and my man Sam. For giving up platforms to those who need, as I don't think I plugged I know I plugged it a couple times on my socials, but probably one of the more important podcasts to listen to, and it was exactly what I was asking for about a podcast or two ago, in regards to trans rights, the Combate fight between McLaughlin and Provost. Anyways, Southpaw was able to, with Carrion from Pride Never Die, another great podcast there, was able to interview Alana, and we get to actually hear, from the actual person themselves. So if you want to go check that out, also shared an article. As I'll probably leave that part out of this discussion because I'm sure I'll talk more about it with Sam. But an article he wrote like back in 2019 about fighter consent, we'll talk about it organically here, but as far as that article, I just want to give that a plug off the top. Maybe I'll expand more about it on my recap with Sam, but I just want to talk about some technical stuff here as we recap the card from top to bottom. Thank you guys for the shouts. Shouts is pretty much just to all you guys. Those of you who, tip your cap or let me know that I helped you in some way means a lot. It seems like it was everyone won for the most part. It seemed like last night. Hopefully you did, and we're amongst those, and that's always good to see. I'm always happy for other success, and if I was able to play any of help, it does mean a lot, and especially when y'all let me know that. So thank you very much for that. That's at Dan Tom MMA on Twitter. Probably the only social media I'm really active on, and at the PYN podcast on all social platforms. Likes and all that stuff, it all helps. I haven't really been plugging that stuff for the Apple Podcast or the YouTube, but I do appreciate you guys, especially on the YouTube, Daniel Tom MMA. I'm lucky enough to have some cool commenters and people liking the stuff there, so appreciate all that. So, plugs and formalities are out of the way. We're just going to push into a recap because it's another busy week, and it's been a busy Sunday. I'll save you these excuses. Just was another crazy. I had to just do a bunch of stuff before I could record this. I thought I was just going to be able to wake up and record it today, but it just took me longer than I thought to rewatch some things, and I'm really glad I did. Because it was this one of those, pay-per-view that I did well on aside. Honestly, just as a fan and a fan of technical things, there's some really cool stuff to talk about and meaningful things. As far as we'll talk about takeaways of Diaz versus Lawler. Spoiler alert: No Country for Old Men, as I referenced on Twitter. There's definitely a lot of that parallel, so we'll talk about that. All right, we'll get into it. UFC 266. We went 10-3 overall in picks, 2-0 in props, and 1-0 in our parlay. So again, been keeping it small, been sniping, been staying disciplined, been targeting the more proven sample sizes, if you will, and it's paying off. Another winning week. I felt like, and we'll talk about it, I felt like I left money on the table. I didn't chase the Volkonowski since I had a perfect night. Like, why do you want to go ruin that? Even though I would have cashed. Spoiler alert: Volkonowski defeated Brian Ortega via unanimous decision. We're going to talk about that first here in a second. But yeah, I just felt like, again, with having to rush and use all these different deadlines, it's really hard to just do the way I want to and just go through a card uninterrupted with like a decent amount of energy left. Very difficult. I won't get into why. No one cares, and I don't care to get into it. But yeah, it's just been very hard. So I've been being more disciplined and trying to focus, which is good. And again, it's paying off well in that regard. But even though 10-3 is not bad, my picks are still suffering. I felt this could have been a night. I could have gone perfect or close to it. And yeah, there's just some fights where I picked right and didn't play, or I picked wrong, but I wanted to go to the other side. And I probably would have if I had more time to study. And a lot of hindsight, good lines. So we'll talk about that. But yeah, Alexander Volkonowski defeats Brian Ortega. I think I had it like 50, I might have had it like 49-44, giving maybe one round to Ortega toward the end. I was kind of intoxicated live, which, Volkonowski actually doubles him up in strikes, and then when I went to rewatch it, I'm like, yeah, that's a Volkonowski round. So I'm more of a 50-44, even more of a 50-43, because I feel you could argue two 10-8s in there. And we'll talk about that. Volkonowski came out very well in round one, and that was probably Ortega's, second most competitive round, the first and the last rounds. He was doing some good things. He was able to check Volkonowski, get some powerful leg kicks of his own, but Volkonowski was just it was just beautiful that ever so slight delay he has on his right hand from like an inside slip. It's just so perfect and picturesque. And he's so comfortable with loading on that left side with that slight delay that we saw about round two, about 3 minutes and 40-second mark, I think. You see Volkonowski throw a calf kick, and then a right hand comes right after that. And it's not like your typical, like, really random references for, like, from Machida to even, like, a guy like Elias Theodorou who did this, where they use the typical, more karate, traditional martial arts style of counterbalancing your kick off the same side with a punch. So you kick, and then, like, let's say you kick with your right side, especially if it's your orthodox, your power stance, so you kick from your rear, your power, your right side. And as that kick is coming back for the rechamber, to counterbalance it, you are shooting a punch out, kind of at the same time. It could be like a bonus shot. It could be like a little gotcha to get your opponent to get his guard up, and you can build off of that. Or you could just score points off it, right? But it was just really beautiful how he did it. He does it in a different way where it comes like one after the other. And the balance and the load that's on his left leg to be able to accomplish both with power was just really sweet. So that's round two, 3 minutes and 40 seconds. You see Volk hit this sweet calf kick, right hand combo. Not too long after that, at about the 2 minute and 55-second mark or 35-second mark, in the round two, Ortega almost repeats the max head kick. He throws a couple, fodder shots, if you will, gets Volkonowski where he does his retreat dip shell, where he kind of steps back at a 45. But the power side right head kick, was still almost hit, very similar. And then Volk comes back later in the round, shows some really good hand fighting examples at round two, at about 2 minutes and 18 seconds. Ortega actually feels like he did better in orthodox stance when he was just staying long off of his lead from orthodox stance and doubling up on his jab, checking him with the jabs when Volkonowski would kick, somewhat naked. Like, those were his best shots, whereas Volk, even though we didn't see him a lot with southpaws, right? Again, surprised to no one, I'm sure he was well studied, and he did better because he studied against Ortega when he was southpaw, using the hand fighting, the left hooks, the kicks to the in and the outside, which again we saw with the Max fight, that he can attack no matter the stance combination when paired with a fellow stance switcher. So that was really cool. But then you come to round three where it gets crazy. Now, it's funny. Initially, I wanted to go 10-8 Volkonowski, and I still feel like there's an argument for it, which is weird because I'm usually like, Dan, aren't you the one, arguing that submission catches, should be counted more and should be a metric and all that stuff and meaning, and whatnot. I'm like, yeah, I'm definitely contrarian to a fault when it comes to those arguments, but even people who maybe would be more susceptible to doing that. I feel like we're giving Ortega submission attempts a lot of credit by putting out 10-9 scores for Volkonowski, which again is not wrong. I'm not trying to die on a hill, throw shade or anything. I'm just talking about why I thought why I thought then and now that it's still very much open for a 10-8. Because if you read the criteria as far as 10-8 goes, there's the 3Ds as far as damage, duration, domination, I believe. But also, when you get into the language of a 10-8 or even a 10-7 especially, 10-8's more, I don't have the exact language, apologize, but like if a fight also came close to ending, right, and you've got maybe 2 out of the 3Ds or something, contextually you can justify it. Although shouts to Sean Sheehan, talking about you've heard him reference a new directive and why we saw less 10-8s, even though it's like we saw the judges trying, which was good, but then we just saw some weird ones. And I get it, I had issues too, but apparently, word on the street is that Dana did not like the 10-8s and gave a directive there. So again, kind of showing that athletic commissions, how it's like, okay, if that's true, it's like, wait, so promoters can opinions matter? What about fighter safety? You fucking jerks. Sorry, I'm not a fan of commissions, clearly. But yeah, it's if it whereas a fight, 10-7, maybe a fight should have not just came close to being stopped, but like maybe probably should have been stopped. Like the fighter shouldn't still be here, a la Frankie Edgar, Gray Maynard round 1 in their second fight at UFC 125 is that classic example, right? For the differentiations there. And the fight should have been stopped. If you look at the end, it's only, air quotes, about 30 seconds of damage after Volkonowski shakes the second submission, which I'll get into those escapes in a second. But you have to keep in mind that Volkonowski was winning the round before he got cross-countered for the off-balance knockdown. Ortega did hit him, but again, when it's off-balance, it should be accounted for. Most people overcorrect, like judges, and count that shit as a knockdown, which fucking pisses me off. It's an off-balance knockdown because he got his kick caught, and that's how he got thrown into the guillotine. But you have to keep in mind that Volkonowski was having one of his best rounds and outstriking him up to that point. Hurt him. Now, granted, I believe, that calf kick right hand, by the way, I would argue that's the turning point in round 2. But then there's another point where he gets really rocked, and I think that's in round 3, and I think that's with a headbutt, and they were able to confirm that on a replay where, Volk does his typical 2-3 counter, crash counter, and Ortega jumps in and looks like he successfully avoids both, rolling under the hook, but as he rolls under, he looks off balance because something hit him. And according to commentary on their production replay, which their production crew is great about doing that for them, they confirmed that it was a headbutt. But either way, he's getting outstruck and fucked up that round. And before, during, and after the submission attempts, he's getting punched as well. So in between, he's also getting ground and pounded. Now, the first guillotine, it was scary because you saw him flailing, and you saw his legs flailing up. Where Ortega had that strong mount, where he's not just mounted, but he's underneath them. So it makes it hard for them to get their legs, fight for one back, to get a half guard, to get their base to buck. And for that reason, it almost looked dead to rights. But in the replay, if you look, Volkonowski, and it's scary because both of the submission attempts were on Ortega's strong side, his left side. Again, even though he fought most of his career orthodox, just like Charles Oliveira, both of them do their chokes from their left side. Any camps or people strategizing for camps out there, don't put your head on that side. Put your head on the opposite side, you will probably, on paper, decrease your chances of getting choked by 50%. Because everybody favors sides, even in grappling. It's not just striking, right, where you have your sides on techniques. And that guillotine was on his strong side, but if you look, on the other side, where his head's at, you'll see Volkonowski's hand inside of Ortega's forearm and pushing that down. And that's kind of giving him enough space. And as soon as Volkonowski, I think he realizes that he's not going to be able to half guard, buck, or bridge with all the leverage that that style of mount took away from him. He comboed the that hand push for safety with really turning his chin into Ortega, into the ribs, and into his chin into his ribs, in toward the direction where his grip was, and that actually helped break the grip, because then you see his chin post into the ribs, and he can kind of flex forward, like pushing off, like you want to do your chin to the chest, and you will see him do that kind of a move, and that helps buck and break the grip off. Then of course he gets on top and starts grounded pounding. Ortega grabs a wrist. It's all he needs. Jumps up, launches up, and snatches the triangle. Just smartly does the thing where he doesn't grab the foot because the foot's weak and can break. He grabs the ankle, or the shin bone just above the ankle, as far as his overlapping triangle leg, and then I don't know how much Volkonowski was going to stack, but usually you assume that's what someone's going to do, especially in MMA with the striking. And Ortega's done this before. I'm a big fan of it, although coaches like my man, shouts Dennis Davis, always also warns his guys about hooking under the leg for their triangles. I love it for leverage. It goes into the arm bar. You can sweep and whatnot. You can go, what do they call it? Flower sweeps, I think. I don't know. But there's sweeps and stuff there as well. The danger in MMA, though, is when you hook under the leg, if someone decides to sit back down, it's hard to get your hand back because the glove almost acts as a trapping mechanism when you clamp on the just above the glove, right? Whereas if it's just all skin and sweaty, you can kind of slide it out if it's just your hand, but that glove almost makes it trapped in there, and then you can get kind of grounded, pounded to death, right? Go see Wellington Turman's last knockout loss. He got caught doing that. However, Volkonowski, it looks like he gets off base from it, and it reminded me of the Anderson Silva Chael Sonnen 1 fight when Anderson does the comeback in round 5, and that's usually dangerous because they're off base, they're on their ass, right? And Ortega, A good triangle guy, and B, more importantly, still has a decent grasp, so usually it's pretty much bad news from there. But the escape that he's doing now, I'm not a big fan of this one. I'm always about pressuring in, and since I am a fan of hooking the leg when I do triangles, naturally, if you're good at something, generally, you are good at defending it. So my main escape is I actually will push forward, and either the first triangle escape I ever learned, again, shout out to Dennis Davis, probably back in 2007 or 2008, was or proper defense, I should say. But this was actually not used that much. So someone gets the triangle, and now you don't want your posture broken, your arm pulled across, pulled down, angle braked, all that, right? But you got in the triangle catch. If possible, you can. Okay, so your head and arm, the arm that's trapped inside the triangle, will wrap around a leg, almost like you're trying to guillotine their thigh. And on that same side you're wrapping, you're gonna drive your ear to the mat and yank down and toward you like you're sucking their legs in off of a double, and that breaks the triangle grip. You can get a pass off that. I don't like it as much as I've gotten older or more experience. It feels a little more desperate, and I think obviously Volkonowski was in desperation, which is why he had to go to this other escape that I'm going to get to in a second. But the one I like more, which is I will do my best to explain in audio. Even though the other escape that I just described is great because it gets your arm away from getting, shoulder locked or, put across to get the triangle finished, I will keep my arm almost in that position, or it's pointed in the same direction that my opponent would want it to finish a triangle, except what I do is I go palm to palm, so I'm controlling the end of my own limb to help keep control and keep them from gaining control. And as my arm that is in the triangle with my head is a palm-to-palm grip, my forearm is going horizontal, almost across their belly, and I'm driving forward and down into their belly, making them carry my weight. and putting all the pressure, making them burn their legs, letting them burn out. Because triangle and defense is probably my strongest suit. You could ask anybody that grapples with me. They usually won't get me in the triangle, and if they do, it's usually literally a fight for a majority of the round, and they can't grapple the next round after it. But that's the purpose. And I know someone was sharing a clip of Volkonowski saying you let him get tired. He showed him in a triangle similar, using a similar frame to give him space that he used to survive. And people joke about that, but that is an actual tactic. In fact, I can't remember the jiu-jitsu guy, but there's a guy in the gi who has like some of the most mangled ears. It's an old school Brazilian dude. Feel free to hit me at Dan Tom MMA if this rings a bell. But his whole game was allowing people to get triangles on him, and that's how he got his passes. Because when you pass from that, you usually get a pretty good pass, and they're usually pretty damn tired because they're putting down the proverbial pack. And that was his whole game, is tiring guys out, giving just honey trapping them and tiring them out. And I don't think that Volkonowski went into this fight, much less that exchange, with that in mind. But it clearly, as he cited himself in a principle, was something in his own lexicon, and it is true. It's dangerous. You don't want to, but it's true. And again, back to the way you can stack and avoid getting your leg hooked. It's something that I practice again. So I'm driving my weight forward, down and into him as I'm palm to palm grip with my arm that's trapped inside the triangle with my head across horizontally, going down and into their belly. And the great part about that palm-to-palm grip, which the palm-to-palm is essentially glued to their hip, and it's glued to their hip on the same side that they would need to be hooking to get their angle for the triangle, right? Okay, if it's reversed, the same thing would apply reversed. If it's my other arm trapped in there with my head, I'm doing the same thing but reverse, and it's still the same thing for my opponent. They still got to hook to the same side where I'm palm to palm. And the beauty of that palm to palm is I can still not compromise the frame that I'm using to drive and drain my opposition with the arm that's quote unquote in trouble, but the other arm that's quote unquote not in trouble, that's attached to the palm and palm. That elbow, of course, again, it's on the same side where opponent would have to hook the leg. So without even compromising said frame and strong position and posture that I have, I can actually use my elbow to fight. And of course, I can, cheekily lift my leg up briefly on the same side if they get close to grabbing it, while not compromising my base and going one way to the side. So I have two tools essentially to fight their one, which is a risky one, especially in MMA. And that's kind of how I'll go about, and I'll slowly stack. And if I wanted to get out there fast, you wouldn't just stack and sit there. You actually would move the opposite side. That Volkonowski did, but again, it's because I'm pressuring forward, which is why it works. You move to the opposite side. You start circling. You put a knee on their neck, on their face, on their chest to be mean as well, and you circle out and break the triangle that way. Now Volko got the Ortega was able to get his leg, the leg hook, underneath the leg and compromise his balance down. And he goes the opposite way, which is scary because on paper it's like, oh, was he going to get caught by it? But if you look, what he does is he reaches in Volko with his free hand, because it's his left arm and his head's trapped in. So his right arm, I believe, reaches up into the inside of Ortega's thigh. And this is a defense this can work too if you're trying to stack defend. It's more of a last ditch, of course. But he pulls the thigh down to to make some space for his neck and his artery to get flow. Then he quickly puts his head, when he's on his back, he quickly replaces that hand, and he almost like C-clamps to the opposite thigh and wedges his elbow into the hip. So he's got like his elbow wedged into Ortega's hip, and now he's kind of C-clamping, pushing the other side after he created a little bit of breathing space. And it looked much scarier to us, but in replay, and again, I'm not as familiar with this escape, so apologies if I'm butchering it. I know I'm not doing the best explaining it, especially through audio medium, but I think that essentially that when you rewatch it, you see that Volko's pretty calm about that one too. He's not too worried. Again, was it his plan to get that deep? And a guy named City's Triangle? Like, no, obviously not great, not the plan. But when put there, he did have desperation modes of escape, which was good. And I feel like going to that side and someone can weigh in on this much better than me. But dropping to that side actually can be its own defense too, and I think Volkonowski knew that. Because again, the side that Volkonowski dropped to was his left side. That was also the side where the triangle was locked up at, right? So it's similar principle to when someone has the back and they have the body triangle. Even people who don't train jiu-jitsu, the commentary's gone over this, that you all should know this, is that you roll to the side that the triangle's on, right? Because that disrupts the leverage and sometimes pops it open. Same thing with the triangle. So I'd like to think that Volkonowski is smart, because he is, and was doing all that on purpose. But obviously live, when we don't have the time to process this, it looks incredibly scary. But there were safety measures from frames, awareness grips, to the direction that he was rolling to. Again, they're last ditch ones, not ones I would recommend going to first, but when you have to, they're there. Not ones I particularly am familiar with, or in my repertoire. I'm so diehard stacking, just because I'm just really confident in stacking inside guards with submissions, or just in a clean guard. And the principles there, but when you look at what he was doing, they all made sense, man. They made sense when you actually go back and look at it. So yeah, he gets out of that and then just beats the crap out of him, and that's where the fight should have been stopped, because the visuals of Ortega just flattened out, like literally like a cartoon, like Acme, right? When they jump off and they get flattened on the pavement, like that's what it looked like, and if that wasn't enough of a visual to stop it, like the fact that the corner had to help him up. This is a rule, folks. I'm trying to think of the fight. Please let me know. There was a fight earlier this year where it happened, and people were up in arms and defending, that the fighter should have been able to have the right to take more brain trauma, because, they need more of that. And I'm not throwing shade, like, because there's people, like, again, we're live, we're having drinks. I get it. Like, and there's well-meaning people who are like, I don't think it was that bad. He came back. And I'll talk about that opinion and why. I'm not trying to, come at anybody, but why that's a not good opinion to have. I'll explain that. But just by the rules, forget opinions for a second, okay? These are facts. Hashtags facts, bro crowd. Y'all should appreciate this then. It is a rule that your corner is not allowed to help you, or the cut man, which is why good referees, you'll see, scold the corners and the cut man, because it's your natural instinct, and sometimes the fighter will almost reach for it. And good refs will scold that. You have to let them go on their own will. Ortega was lucky enough to get flattened like right in his corner, to where he didn't have to walk anywhere, and he still wouldn't have been able to make it to his corner without his cornerman literally picking him up, which should be an instant disqualification. I will reference Eric Anders versus Thiago Santos. We saw that, and it was really gross. And I don't think the ref stopped it until like Anders just passed. He couldn't even make it with the assistance, and then they stopped it. Like, dude, you should have already stopped it. But yeah, if you look at the shots that he took statistically, by the way, 214 total with a 60% accuracy. Volkonowski, by the way, to 88 total strikes. The most shots he lands, by the way, and I'm not trying to like remind and try to like bias the story. No, like out of all the rounds, 61 strikes, significant strikes. That was the leader in round 3 for Volkonowski. It was also the biggest differentials, or one of the biggest differentials, next to round 4, the round he shouldn't have come out for. And if you look at the Holloway fight, like, yeah, the Holloway fight, he gets 134 alone landed on him at a 60% accuracy rate as well. 59 technically, but we'll give it to Max, 60, right? Throwing that many punches, more than Volk did. But if you look at it, a lot of it was in that round 4, and the doctor actually saved his ass. And you can actually find Ortega articles and quotes and Instagram posts where he actually agreed with it and was like, the doctor saved me. But no one came to save Ortega, not his corner, and sure as shit not the doctor, sure as shit not Herb Dean. So, and if you look at those previous max rounds, as high as they weren't high as like the 61, I believe, for that round 3. I mean, it was pretty close, and it was, I think in total, like technically more if we really want to split hairs there, but you shouldn't. They were just both really bad fucking beatings that Ortega was pushed into in more ways than one, and not protected from more ways than one, at least in this one. For sure. Because they had multiple times in the round and 2 times in between the corners for damn sure, and that's not arguable. You can have opinions on to what degree, but the fact is, stopping the fight was on the table. It was on the table, and it was not taken. So you have that, which alone should be incriminating, and Herb was right there and saw it, so it wasn't like the ref didn't see the corner help him. By the way, the Octagon officials who I feel like they just stand there and yell at them when the time's coming up. They're also supposed to be like looking for which is why the inhaler thing was so ridiculous. Like they're not supposed to be standing there for camera time. Although I'm sure a lot of them that may be their motivation. Like they're actually supposed to be watching the corners and making sure these rules are abided by. Safety and all, which is why these commissions are there. None of that's going on. So again, we've already got multiple failures, and we're not even into the championship rounds yet. We already have multiple failures from the commission at multiple levels in a fight that on paper should have been stopped once, and on opinion should have at least been stopped twice, 2 windows now in counting. We go to round 4. Biggest strike differential. Third most strikes landed. Round 5, Volkonowski does deceptively well on the rewatch. He outlands Ortega double. So people saying, he came back in round 5. It's like, well, no, Volkonowski actually had his second best statistical striking round in round 5. In the round that, and doubled Ortega in strikes in the round that Ortega, air quotes, came back from. And even if Ortega came back and actually had a strong round, justifiably, even more, he comes back, has a strong round, he wins the fucking fight. It does not change the cost that he already paid for the head trauma incurred, because if you look at round 4, I just write bad. It's insane. By the way, that the doctor tweet that I tweeted up, and people are saying what they think it is. I tweeted that it sounded like they said he thinks he can fight, or I don't think he can fight, and both those are incriminating. Someone in a DM said, possibly, I'm thinking he can fight after listening to it many times. I agree. I think that's what it is. And that language-wise is less incriminating. But if you watch it, it's completely incriminating. It's it's a failed DUI test. So again, we're not into the championship rounds, and we're adding on to the multiple failures that were already on paper not met, right? Ortega walks the wrong direction. Walks the wrong direction twice despite being pointed to. And he can barely see where he's stepping on the mat. They gave him 2 tests where Herb Dean changes the fingers until Ortega can get it right. Ortega says, I think I can. It's like, I think no. There's no I think. That was him. That's a fighter. When a fighter says I think, that's them asking for a way out, because they can't tell you no. They can't lose their manhood or womanhood or fighterhood. You know what I'm trying to say there. But it was just gross. And if you look at the doctor when he says I'm thinking he can still fight or whatever. Another reason why I thought maybe he said, maybe he did say that, I don't think he can fight. Herb almost reacts like a boss hearing some news he doesn't like. No, fuck that. No, this is how it's going to go. And you see Herb with an urgency, and he goes toward Brian. And he's like, no, you're going to tell me what finger. It's just like a cop at an it was almost like a bad cop show interrogation. And the bad cops interrogating so bad that they're like little schoolboys, because it was just, you could see it's the same behavior, like little kids. Like one kid goes at the energy, and because we're humans and we have this weird mimicking energy, you see the doctor, all of a sudden he starts coming at Ortega. Yeah, who shot him? Where was he? Where were you on the night of this? That's what it looks like. Go watch the body language of that scene. It's fucking gross. Like the fighter is asking for a way out. Y'all should know this. And it just, passing multiple things. Herb should know it from his fighter experience. being in there with the fighters so much, and the doctors should know it just based on their basic fucking protocol, which they failed, right? So they send him in there. He doesn't even know where he's at, of course, and he just gets lit up. I think for about 2.5, for about half the round, he's on his back taking hard shots. And I wrote round 4 ground and pound shots at 120 in round 4 with the left, and 113 with the right. Oof, I wrote. And that's why you can't also, even though you shouldn't compare in the sense that they're both bad, but if you want to compare and say, well, it's not as bad as Max for that argument, significant strikes and stats aren't the end-all be-all. I know I'm citing them, but I'm citing them in conjunction to make points that are also identifiable and confirmable from multiple other facets, okay? The stats, though, are very tricky because go watch those shots, again, ground and pound shots round 4 at 120 with the left, 113 with the right. Like, these are really hard shots with your head has nowhere to go. Whereas Max Holloway is not a one-shot knockout guy. He is not as powerful as Volkonowski. And Ortega, who especially is like really in that floaty Philly shell in that whole fight, right? He is rolling with the harder to lighter shots. He's taking a little bit off it for what that's worth. The head has nowhere to go when you're flat on your back like that and just taking shots. Those are really, really bad. Then Ortega makes it back to his corner somehow after round 4. And instead of making up for it, the corner is barely letting him breathe. Like, at first I thought it was something happened to him because he's making these weird like exhales, like. But I'm like, okay, no, this is a breathing technique that Ortega's trying to do to get his breath in. That's good. That's responsible of him. If anything, it shows that he's, for the people arguing that he's still capable enough to fight, he's remembering how to do breathing exercises, I guess. If we're really, really lowering the bar of competency for fighters here, he's remembering to breathe. Okay. If you go look at that round, the fucking dipshit corner, you got Tiki Gozin in there, by the way, who, I don't know if it's the damage that he sustained from the guy 2 fights earlier, Robbie Lawler, back in the Diaz. But Tiki, the manager, by the way, top 5 fighters fucked over by their corners and managers. That's a topic we'll have to keep in mind. Like, he says, quote, this is called earning it, Brian. This is called earning it. Oh, is that what it's called? It's not called brain damage? Well, what was it called what he did against Max? Was that earning it? Oh, technically, he earned it with an amazing performance where he didn't take damage and fought smart against TKZ. You were managing them, right? Shouldn't maybe we earn it that way? I don't know whatever your fucked up definition of earning it is. But in the middle of Brian trying to get his fucking breaths, they put a water bottle in his face and he's doing these outside exhales. And it's a full fucking water bottle, so it's like spilly and it's over to the top. And they throw it right to his nose to where it splashes up into his nostrils and in his eyes. And the camera cuts away to go to the other corner. But I wanted to keep it on there to see how fucked up Brian Ortega got from the corner man just fucking being so fucking stupid. You don't even know how to feed fucking water. God, I hope you're not a fucking parent. I know it's a high-stress situation and we shouldn't grade, but you know what? There's a lot of fucking benefits of the doubt we could have given this fucking corner. This isn't because I don't like Brian Ortega. Again, people, making these arguments, and with the tweet that I said, for people who have to hear this, like, it doesn't matter. Again, he could have came back and won after all this, folks. It still doesn't matter. I'm still just, and you still should be too, especially if you're a Brian Ortega fan, because I'm not saying this, and neither is anybody saying this. It's not because we're not a fan of these people. It's because they get pushed into these positions, and it's not because I'm a contrarian, not like the hype guys. It's like, no, because this is what happens to the hype guys. They get thrown in there. They get to show how tough they are much more sooner than they need to in career-altering beatings. Which is what it was. You hear John Anik saying it on the broadcasting on Holloway. And you see the corner being stupid saying, good, Brian, good. Round 3 going into round 4. However, I'm trying to figure out if it was Henner. It looks like it was Henner, the guy who wasn't in the corner this time. I don't know if he was. At least he wasn't forefront in the Tiki position. He looked like the only one that was trying to stop the fight. And according to Ortega, he's the only one that he retained. And again, according to Ortega, post the Holloway fight, he was glad and agreed with the doctor stopping it. So, yeah. Not seeing Henner, not seeing it stopped. And not that Henner's some kind of fucking god or whatever. I'm just saying, like, I'm trying to put the pieces together. I went back to watch these things, people. And yeah, that's just really bad. That was just really bad damage. And it just sucks. And again, so for people arguing or, trying to, not even arguing, just, even if you did it well-meaning, like, seriously, like, that is why. And again, for you stats guys, if those stats weren't enough, how about this one? This one from Michael Carroll at MJC flip da script, DA for da. Brian Ortega is just the second fighter in UFC history to suffer a -100 or more significant strike differential on 2 occasions, going -170 26 tonight and -180 versus Holloway. He joins NamFam, another jiu-jitsu guy from California who got really into the striking and wanted to make fun shows. Chasing those bonuses, Again, not trying to make like a meaningful end-all be-all comparison or anything with that. Just saying it's just not a surprise. And yeah. So again, for people questioning why, like that is why, like multiple metrics, multiple rules, multiple confirmations, if not for your visual and common sense, which should have been enough. So yeah, that was really gross and puts a stain on it because it was just really like I started out pointing out a lot of the technical stuff. There was really awesome technical stuff to this fight to go watch. I know I just spent like a half hour talking about this fight, but yeah, that's a pretty thorough breakdown of it. I'm not gonna spend long. I'm gonna kind of go through the rest pretty fast here. Valentina Shevchenko defeated Lauren Murphy, cashed that over, which was awesome. Although it didn't look like it was gonna cash because Shevchenko is actually like much more aggressive and mean than she normally is, and Lauren Murphy could not get anything going. Oh my goodness, I feel bad. I'm not trying to pile on her corners. I know it's been piled on. And Lauren Murphy made a really nice positive post. And I, too, am aware that was the cornering style for Murphy. That's how she prefers it. She likes kind of being positive talked like that. My critique was more not so much the positive talk. It's more, and maybe because, and again, not that you can't bullshit a bullshitter. I've been bullshitted plenty of times. I'm not the sharpest tool myself. I'd be silly to pretend I was. That being said, as I imagine with everybody, when it does come to the things that you do know, generally, you can spot out some bullshit. And I really sensed some bullshit in the corner. I don't know who it was. I don't think it was Crew Bob. Might not even been from her husband, who I always give shouts to. But the striking advice someone tried to give her was not just what the advice was, it was the way they said it. It was so insecure that it was just reeking with insecurity, and it was only the first round. I'm like, really? You're going to give that energy to your fighter? So when I tweeted, that's what I meant. Like, that's really tough to hear. Start really reaching for advice. And also it just seemed like that either the person was just completely faltering under pressure, which can happen and is fine, I guess. It's not fine, but it's understandable. It's explainable. But it just came off to me like, ooh, someone's faking it in there. And I don't know if that was the case. It could have been the other, not the latter. But either way, it was just bad. Not that you needed me to pick on a corner to tell you that fight was going to go bad, but you get what I'm saying. I'm just happy the overcashed. Hopefully, Murphy's all right. Yeah, And, horny Shevchenko fans were able to get their, they're like, ooh, dancing times 2, which was shots. Hopefully you guys appreciated that drinking game tweet there. The Robbie Lawler defeated Nick Diaz, 3rd round TKO. Yeah, man, it's tough. It's like, it started bad. We're like, okay, Nick's not going to make it out of this. This was a really bad pick, as if I didn't already think that going in. But then he starts coming back, and you're like, okay, maybe if he survived the storm, he's putting the volume together. He's showing some craft. His eyes looked like they were working. Like, he was making some smart moves. He was seeing what was coming, even when he was getting bombed on and kind of like having to shoot and survive for a little bit. His eyes seem to be working in there, which was a huge. That can be what goes first a lot of times. If anything, maybe at that class too, especially that weight class and lower. Welterweight, even though it was a middleweight fight. You know what I'm saying? So that was good. But I think it was more of a mental note. I'm not sure. So I'm just going to blanket credit Zane, Phil, and Connor. I'm not sure which one of them was talking about it, but like comparing the Anderson Silva mentality, how Nick might mentally be checked out, which was a huge flag. And I was like, ooh, I didn't know if I gave that enough credence. Now, Nick showed to be more aggressive in this Robbie fight, for sure, than the Anderson fight. So he was like, his wherewithal was there. Like, he wasn't scared, homie, right? And not that anybody was calling him scared, but you get what I'm saying. He was functioning, his eyes were working, but there definitely was, maybe not in that exact way that I just cited or just framed, but there was a mental component in there where the pitter-patter, the technicality was there, but the meanness and the commitments to hard shots wasn't. There was only a couple times where we started to turn the tide and got Robbie to start backing up, but otherwise it was Robbie just constantly pushing him back, suffocating. Robbie looked rejuvenated. I thought he was shot, and maybe he's not. Although to my credit, and people that thought he was, I mean, Lawler admitted himself that he hasn't been able to get up for fights, and this one got him up, and he thanked Nick and was just blown away, and you could see that from the start of his performance to the finish. I mean, the confidence he had in the corner, because even though Nick was doing better and surviving the storms, and you might start thinking, okay, now if we get deeper in the fight, we're getting better. I don't know about you guys, but for me, by the mid to the end of the second round, it looked like it was just a matter of time. And then you see Robbie, how confident he was in the corner in the third round, full of energy. Oof, this was going to be bad. And then, poetically enough, he gets hit with a check hook and takes a knee. The left looks like it just barely misses. He goes down, looks to hold his leg for a second, stops, thinks about it, tells Herzog, he doesn't want anymore, and it's done. And I don't hold it against Nick Diaz. I wasn't surprised. I don't think anybody should. And not just because it's Nick Diaz, not just because it's a fighter at that stage of their career even. I feel like any fighter should have that right, and and not be criticized for it. I know we're passionate, we're having drinks, we're making bets, yada yada, and I get it. But if you think about it, and the fight game, and I'm not going to try to go into some even deeper diatribe here, but like, this is ugly, man, and these fighters aren't given much dignity. It's not everybody can go out on top like a George St. Pierre, right? Or even in a fan favorite way, like a Chris Lytle. And I don't know if Chris Lytle did. I know he came back for bare knuckle and won, but then did he stick around and ruin his storybook there? You get what I'm saying. The only dignity, if at all, in a sport that really offers you not much. And I don't want to get too much into the consent article with Sam that I want to talk with him about, but is your own consent, right? Your own choice. Like we talked about, a couple podcasts ago, with how all fighters, no matter what their gender, how they identify, especially if we're given, people in society like the Greg Hardys a shot. Like, this should be a place where we can express ourselves. Yes, I'm not going back on what I said there, but by the same token, that the fighter's choice, like woman's choice, right? If they don't want to do it and they want to quit in the middle of it, they have that fucking right to, because they were in there doing it. So, I didn't see too much shit being thrown Nick Diaz's way there, but I just think it's something we should keep in mind. I know y'all are salt of the earth people if you're even listening to this show or this far, so I'm not trying to lecture you guys, because you guys definitely weren't among that crowd, but it's just something that I was just realizing and really was pointed out, as Nick Diaz, as I said, he is the Norm Macdonald of MMA, because he kind of rambles, and he definitely stands out from the crowd, especially on daises. He's got his own rhythm, but he says some of the most poignant things. And And it makes a lot of sense. And his honesty has just been amazing. And I think as he's gotten older, he's gotten more of a hand on it. I think if anything that he's moved out of the party phase, I think there is truth to that, but not in the sense that was used to maybe market this fight, that he's focused and back better than ever. Although I will say, I did think we were at least going to maybe see some of that shape that he was flossing on the Instagram. I don't know what happened. If it was a physical injury, a mental one, something went awry, but yeah, with the camp changes and the weight and this and that, and him clearly coming looking like he wasn't going to be able to make welterweight, like what was going on here? But I think it's just honest, and it's like I said, I got No Country for Old Men vibes, and there's just parallel. I'm going to attach up. I play a scene to close this out here. It's just an amazing scene in an amazing movie, amazing dialogue, everything. And it really sums up what I imagine what Nick Diaz's conversation in his head would look like between Tommy Lee Jones's character and his uncle. Ellis, I believe, is his name. He's kind of a rundown sheriff, and Tommy Lee Jones, if you haven't seen the movie No Country for Old Men, is a sheriff that's on his way out. And he just feels overmatched. And he's coming to grips that his career is over, and reflecting on how he thought it would be by the time he got to this age. And there's just so many parallels there. And it doesn't help that Nick Diaz himself said, I had it coming. And of course, Ellis, a really epic way to kind of close out the story that he tells about their uncle and relative getting shot down. Living his life, living the life of the law, the parallel life of the fighter until the bitter end. And when he's shot and he's trying to get to his gun, and the wife's trying to take care of him, but Ennis or Ellis says, he knew the score even if she didn't. And it just reminded me of Nick Diaz sitting down there in that moment he had waiting. Herzog's waiting, Lawler's waiting, the whole world's waiting. That split moment. After Nick Diaz goes down, Ferry briefly grabs his shin, rocks back up onto his butt and sits up with the momentum. Takes that split second. He knew the price at that point, even if we didn't. And like Ellis said, you can't stop what's coming. And it was just one of the many reminders, but of course in his own unique way, as Nick tends to do, one of the many reminders of the game these fighters play and the cost. And yeah, man, it's just unforgiving, Even for Lawler, who won, it's like, now does this momentum set him up for some young gun now they're going to throw him in there with, and we're just going to watch Lawler get washed again? And eventually Lawler won't be able to, crawl back up on shore, That's just the way it is. So, again, it was a really stupid pick, and maybe, especially when the line got down, man, regardless of who you pick, maybe, we all should have played Lawler in hindsight there. But, Lawler, this was his first stoppage win since UFC 189 in 2015. So Lawler hadn't knocked anybody out since the last time Nick Diaz fought. When you line it up like that or phrase it like that, well, then perhaps, again, the inactivity not as crazy as it sounded. Again, by unemotional, on paper, raw on paper, yeah, they overperformed. Nick Diaz did, right? Again, he was showing some real craft out there. His eyes were working and everything. He just, didn't have that old killer instinct. And I remember one of the interviews he was doing on the promo with Olivi on the fight day once, like recorded earlier in the day, and he was like, I wouldn't want to run into who I was back then. he said about his younger self. And he catches himself and he goes, I mean, I wouldn't want to run into me now either, but the me now is more. I don't know if I want to. I don't know if I want to get. Oh, I don't know if I want to get hit by that. And he even like said that and was like, "Oh shit," and which is good. It's smart. But that's the thing, you know. As he's like talking about getting out of the party stage, I think it was less about, like I said, about being a super warrior again, and more about that coach role that I didn't realize he was taking. And with the way he was talking and stuff like that, you're like, he doesn't, yeah, man, you get older, you get more sensitive, like, and head trauma helps speed that process along, let me tell you, firsthand experience. And I know where Nick's at, and it's not fighting, man. So I hope he don't fight again. If he does, and again, they all do it for money. I get that, obviously. And Nick's always said that. I get that, obviously. But this is another level. He could at least, he still had that animal in him to where he could still use the tools that he needed to get it, make his money. And now he can't work those tools as well. So, yeah, it's tough. All right. Curtis Blades defeated Rosenster decision. This was tough, man. I'm a Blades fan, and again, I'm a grappling fan, but this was just, oof. This is bad. I know Blades said because he got his eye messed up that he wanted to play it safe, but that's the whole thing at heavyweight. Even if you're one of the only dominant wrestlers doing the most dominant damn thing, at a certain point it's diminishing returns because you're just allowing your fighter in the fight. Because that messed up eye happened after Blades already had a decent stanza of grounding Rosenstruck. And something I was hoping for, and obviously wasn't too confident, which is why this wasn't on my plays for this fight or anything like that, even though I did pick Blades to win, was that he was going to make more hay when he got those positions, like realizing that, oh, A, I can't stand and strike too long, and B, when I do grapple, I really got to make use of it, because when these guys get back up, it just takes one. And whereas to get the takedown and get the work, it takes a lot of energy. So let's be efficient. And I didn't see that. I didn't see the aggression or the efficient aggression. And then he gets hurt, and that should be even more so urgency to get the fight to the ground. We see a little bit of that. He does get the fight to the ground, but then no urgency. The urgency stops. You know, you're going to let him out of the round or be so inactive the ref could potentially stand you up. Now you got to deal with it again. So I don't buy that excuse. I get it. I'm not trying to, shit on a fucking talented ass heavyweight who I like, who seems like a really nice guy and is a good fighter. But if I'm just being honest, like that's not good. And I'm not even talking about the Dana White, you got to bang, bro. You're going to put a ceiling on your career. I'm not even talking about any of that. I'm talking about just winning fights and being safe and not taking damage. Like, it's actually more safer to be aggressive in a case like Blades, in the pool he's swimming in with the skills that he has. So that's frustrating. It's not the lay and pray or boring rest. It's not those criticisms. It's simply fighting smart criticisms. Which sounds ironic because I'm also preaching aggression. Speaking of aggression, Jessica Andrade defeated Cynthia Calvillo via first round TKO. Yeah, man, this was the parlay piece and the anchor for me and many for a reason. And I love Calvillo. It's just training out of the back of my gym. But like I was saying, we saw some of that where, and again, I love Caraway, I love Tate, but they trained with that guy, the striking with the guy, that Gifford guy. And again, lateral movement and boxing fundamentals are much needed, and everybody could use a little bit of that. But Calvillo, Caraway, Tate, all strong grapplers. And the style of striking, although boxing fundamental, lateral movement good, they're not great connecting pieces if you're a grappler, right? That's your thing. You're a wrestler, you're a submission grappler, a submission specialist. And against someone like Andrade, who's like, John Lineker and Lawler in the sense of they have those kill zones between the cage and the inner black octagon lines. Like, you're just going to give that to Andrade? Who had an easy time just, she doesn't follow and chase like she used to. She can actually cut stuff off and box, and yeah. So that was a good stoppage. That was just really bad. Again, even the stuff I did play, I feel like I should have just played more. I feel like I don't want to complain because I did really well and had a perfect betting night on paper, but I did feel like I left money on the table in some senses. Merab Dvalishvili defeated Marlon Moraes via second round TKO. Hearts out to everybody chasing the round props, rounds 1 and 3, because it went right in the middle, and man, I don't even know if it should have even went that long. Keith Peterson, all the refs had long leashes, man. Keith Peterson, what the heck? Really let Moraes take it. And again, it might not seem as big, but when your head has nowhere to go and you're flat on your back, like those shots are much worse. And because of that, and because Dvalishvili wasn't going for submissions and was landing those shots at the end of round 1, that's one where it was like a tale of 2 rounds. Amazing rounds, by the way. I'm not critiquing them. Just, they're interesting to score. I don't know if there's a right answer, and I sure as shit am not one to tell you guys. I'm not an authority on scoring. In fact, my scoring is pretty piss poor considering I haven't been really doing it consistently, and I'm just not great with what I usually look for in fights. I'm not geared for scoring. It's just not a strength of mine, and I can admit that, right? You almost wish these people, people getting paid to would admit it more. But anyways, with this round, I would actually be more sympathetic to a 10-9 adjustment for Marlon, because he almost won. You could have had an argument that the fight could have been stopped, should have been stopped again, because Dvalishvili really won, but he got concussed for sure really badly. So he didn't walk out free, even though he got the win and the comeback, folks. Because I give the first round to Marlon. It would have been a 10-8. I mean, man, it would have been a 10-7 because the fact that assuming he made it to the end of the round, and if Merab doesn't get the takedown, then he's taking. Then it's like probably looks like what, Edgar Maynard, but it definitely would have been a 10-8 Moraes. Except Dvalishvili not only gets a takedown, but again he doesn't go for a submission that didn't get there. He actually went for damage, and I think that brought it back. Because you could almost argue it could have stopped at the end of the first, right? Not as bad as Ortega 3 argument, but an argument nonetheless, and one, of course, I would be sympathetic for as someone who knows the cost. And if head trauma has, competed on some level at least. Dan Hooker defeated Nasrat this week on Hack per ass, unanimous decision. Not much to say there. I felt like I left money on the table. This was just a really good line on Dan Hooker, but I honestly just didn't think the fight was going to happen between all the travel intangibles. So, like I told you guys, I didn't really look at it too much, and which sucked because when you broke it down on paper, he's like, yeah, he's got all the tools and tactics really to just kind of roll here, and he did. So yeah, Dan Hooker showed off his underrated wrestling that I was talking about in my breakdowns pre-Poirier fight, but I think he made it a little more obvious for people this time around. Hey, but again, it's the benefit of following me, folks. I do squeeze out a gem or two. Put up with my nonsense. Chris Dawkins defeated Shamil Abdurrahimov. Shamwowed Shamil. Shamwowed him. Dagestani Randy Couture, second round TKO. Again, had to get 2 finishes here. I think this was the fight where I was just like cheering because I cashed Dawkins, but also cursing at Mark Smith, who just kept letting this fight go on. It was really, really bad fucking stoppage. Like, dude, like, how much are you gonna let this guy take? Like, really? Like, it was goddamn ridiculous. Like, I don't know. It was a Kumite night. It's like when the refs do it, they do it multiple times, and they all tend to do it. It's like, okay, I guess we're giving long leashes, in the name of fairness, because again, the whole justification of their job is safety. But why do that? It's not like these fighters need it. They're clearly protected on multiple levels. Anyway, sorry. Chris Dawkins cashes, though, which was nice. Cashes the prop and the parlay leg for the plus money. Tyler Santos defeated Roxanne Ferry, unanimous decision. She rolled. Nothing to be scary of. She justified the line, I suppose, that she got. I just stayed away, and, probably could have been a fun parlay ad. Jalen Turner, Mr. Turner, defeated Euros Medic. This was really satisfying. Like, super happy to be wrong on this pick, but also unhappy because I feel like if I had more time to watch tape and study, I would have gone with what my gut was, which was to pick Turner. And since I didn't have any underdog plays, he would have been more tempting one to play out of all the underdogs. Because again, I did technically pick Diaz as my underdog, as my only underdog officially, but again, that wasn't for a play. No way in hell. So that was upsetting, also because of what I said with Medic, and I think part of me was kind of hedging because I go hard and heavy with these opinions and then get proven wrong with just the athletic cheating that people like me and Connor and Phil love, right? with Giga Chikadze, and like he's another Eastern European kickboxing guy credential, even though he's just fought a bunch of cans and there's not a ton of his kickboxing footage out there. But okay, we're just gonna go with the hype. And remember what happened last time, Dan? You got shit from everybody plus proven wrong. So let's just go with the fucking hype train and just not get shit. And sure, sure enough, he loses and just looks like he gets broken, which was very satisfying because regardless of the reason, you crumble during adversity, and you're gonna talk shit. Well, guess what? You're gonna get shit, especially in this game, in this day and age of life, regardless of MMA and social media itself. And I'm sorry, but you're gonna put someone out with a triangle and then strike them after they tap and after the ref stops the fight. And then act like you're all hard as shit. Yeah, I took a lot of pleasure in watching Mr. Turner win this fight. And even though I was technically wrong, I was happy to be wrong. And I was so happy for everybody out there that was cashing. I know my man Clint from Die Hard MMA cashed big on this one. Anybody who cashed on Turner, I didn't have enough balls to play. Again, I was wrong. I'm happy to be wrong. I'm not trying to falsely bump my chest. But, me and my bias toward people that kind of act like jerks in fights. And, that plus, even when they don't act like jerks, my bias, like, from hype trains with the quick finishes. So, like, it was just, oof. It was just hit a special feel-good, like a, not quite Marcin Tybura, Greg Hardy feel-good, but it was up there. That being said, I hope Medic, I hope that readjusts his ego. He's a young, talented kid. I'm sure he'll be back. And I wish him the best going forward, as I hope this humbled him in the right ways. Nick Maximoff defeated Cody Brundage via unanimous decision. Yeah, I wasn't really impressed with this fight. Brundage, was a live dog, but Maximoff was able to get to his game. Kind of that counter wrestling game, which is cool, but without good striking. I do wonder how far he was going to get. Matthew Simelsberger, Fantasy Jewish Fight League. You look like a Mattingly from the Simpsons episode. In the Simpsons episode, shave those sideburns, Mattingly. I thought I told you to shave those sideburns. I did, Mr. Burns. Defeated Martin Sano. Shouts to my man Aaron Bronstetter, Captain Insano. Hey kid, how old are you? Big show. Round 1 knockout. Simelsberger, man, looking like the second coming of Matt Brown. Matt Brown gonna do Matt Brown, go knock you out. So good on him. Easy cash for anybody. Jonathan Pierce defeated Omar Morales via submission. I feel like if I watched this fight, I would have picked this dynamic easily, but I didn't. And what's upsetting is, I said this before. I said that recapping Omar's last fight, and I did a brief mention, although I didn't explain the questionable decisions when I mentioned that, is that Omar's just made really questionable grappling decisions, positionally wise, with Shane Young. Now, Shane Young, not known as a submission grappler, so he wasn't able to even, make him pay for it by winning the round, much less the fight. But I don't know why I didn't put 2 and 2 together. He's going against a guy who wants to grapple him. And we just saw Omar make stupid fucking decisions. So stupid. Oh my God. Just ridiculously stupid decisions. And Jonathan Pierce just looked like in crazy shape. Just looks like a pain in the ass guy fight. And, those cardio dudes are good for them later round stoppages. So I'm going to be looking at some Jonathan Pierce round 3s in his future. Good on him and good on people who played him. All right. We're going to go to listener questions right here and get on out of here. It's already 1:09. Pretty long episode. All right. Let's go to these things right quick. Sorry, I'm just getting like a lot of opinions coming in on that stoppage, which are opinions that I don't disagree with. I think people are a bit more sober, which is, I get. I had to do it myself. I had to go watch with sober eyes with some of this stuff, too. So, all right. Adam OC37. If T-City moves up, how many of the top 5s do you see him beating? Moves up to the lightweight, I guess. Let's see. UFC rankings. Yeah, if T-City moves up, how many of the top 5 do you see him beating? Yeah, I was interested. That's an interesting question. He's 5'8". I've seen him in person. Saw him at UFC 223 when he was in town. He offered to step in. He looked pretty thick. but he's not the biggest guy. He could probably be a decent 155er because he's shown power and opportunistic submissions. So I don't think it's out of the question for him to go up to that weight. But you got Dustin Poirier. Maybe something opportunistic, but outside of that, Poirier just puts his shit in. Justin Gaethje, bad matchup, in my opinion. I know he can submit Gaethje for sure if he gets him there, but I don't know if he does. Maybe again, probably something opportunistic, and then he gets his shit pushed in. Beneil Dariush, just a bad matchup. Real bad matchup. Beneil Dariush, you don't even get like the opportunistic stuff. Although the flash knockout, much more on the table now for that one. Number 4, you got Michael Chandler. I think Michael Chandler can avoid this. He's so stubborn and so difficult to choke. You still got the opportunistic worry, but I might even put Chandler above Gaethje for sure as far as chances to beat Ortega, even if Gaethje beats Chandler. It's a matchup thing. Maybe even a better chance than Poirier. Not by much. They both would be, obviously, I think would pick him to push Ortega's shit in. Number 5 is Makhachev. Oh, that's a bad matchup. You'd have to catch some real opportunistic strike or something. So yeah, Tony Ferguson should not be number 6. That would be a really cool fight, actually. If Tony Ferguson wasn't like at the stage that he was in. I don't know what the hell's going on with him. RDA, yeah. Hooker, yeah, I don't know. I don't like any of these even like I could see Gregor doing something at number 10, saying that, giving away something. Otherwise, I would probably take Gregor in that fight too. Carlos Diego Fajeda, I would take over him. Brad Riddell, given his counter wrestling, yeah, I would take him over. Yeah, especially with the the Volkonowski connection there. Yeah, I don't like his chance. Yeah, I think he should stay in featherweight. To be honest. All right, next question. All right, at Zim015. Generally interested in your thoughts about how those of us who practice and or enjoy combat sports, air quotes, reconcile the love, air quotes, with the obvious but necessarily incurred risks, noting some consider the practice of self-defense, not combat. Yeah, so basically he's asking, generally interested in my thoughts about how those of us who practice and enjoy combat sports reconcile the love with the obvious. Yeah, it's tough. I have a tough time doing it because I am aware of these incurred, know people, live through some myself, so on and so forth. Yeah, it makes it really tough, to be honest. That's kind of been a struggle. This podcast theme this last year. I've really been struggling with it in a lot of ways. How about you guys? I feel like I've been seeing more and more people admit to burnout, whether it's on Twitter or otherwise, and that's why I say, and I don't want to love enthusiasm, I'm not hating on anybody, but it's just, UFC every week, I'd never get tired of this. Like, good on you, but that's an unrealistic attitude. And I see, for years I've seen so many people not just have that, but use that to like shame people like myself for like, God forbid, critiquing it or being overwhelmed. But eventually even all those people get overwhelmed too. So it's a very real thing. How you deal with it, it's up to you. And unfortunately, I wish I could give you better advice, but I don't. And I'm going through my own struggle with it. Hey, Matt Joya Plata, Leo Santos Stan on Twitter. How should we feel about Diaz Lawler? No Country for Old Men. Matt Joya, I know you get shit for like not watching movies. I'm going to guess, even though our mutual there, Tommy, even though he's got, what's his name from No Country Old Men, Tommy Lee Jones is his avatar. I'm guessing you haven't seen that, Joya, and I'm not shaming you, by the way. Like, my film watching and opinions have really fallen off. But I just say that to say that, since I already answered your question, I will raise you instead. You got to watch No Country for Old Men, Matt Joya. I know you're listening to this. You better watch it, because I know for Sound of Violence of the Fight Site guys, they're going to give you crap if you don't. Okay? There we go. I love Matt Joya. I'm going to podcast with him soon, I think, hopefully. Let's get the man a guest co-host, Ryan Payne. Yeah, sorry, Ryan, no guest co-host. But again, I'm going to guest co-host with Sam tomorrow, so check that out. At Whiskey Sour, I got one. How the fuck did he get out of those two? I know, right? Definitely explain those. Go back and listen. Shouts to _Whiskey Sour. Kiran Singh, at KIRAN Singh, SING, HIRL. What credible threats are left for Volk other than Max? At this weight class, it's gonna be tough. I don't like anybody's chances, to be honest. There's a lot of people I wouldn't mind seeing Volkonowski maybe beat up, but it's gonna be a minute before we get any challengers from there. His challengers would have to come from other weight classes, whether you've got like Cejudo coming up out of retirement. That would actually be really interesting if Cejudo, really took it seriously, is serious about those. Not saying he's not. I'm just saying, given the dynamic we saw, the Charles Oliveira and Brian Ortega, and the similarities there, to have the more taller, more well-versed, the more refined, more dangerous, and Chucky Olives, that would be very fun. As far as champion versus champion, but we pretty much got to look outside of the weight classes, Even young guys that I like Topuria at featherweight, there's still a lot of development, especially when you have the 5-round and just strategic factor. It's a whole nother ball game Volk makes you play. So, yeah, it's very vacant at featherweight, my friend. That's the answer for that one. Christopher Negron at Negron MMA. He says, do you think the main event should have been stopped after the third? Who do you think... Okay, there's a couple questions there. I'll answer the first one. Do you think the main event should have been stopped after the third round? Yes. Yep, definitely. And explain why. By the rules and opinion. His next question is, who do you think is the best women's flyweight besides Valentina? What's next for her? She looks bulletproof. Appreciate you, Dan. Appreciate you, Chris. Who do you think is the best women's flyweight? That's interesting. There's a lot of up and coming ones, and I don't want to put the Blanche Fields or these girls out there too soon or whatnot. But the next best flyweight. I mean, geez, even though she can fight at strawweight, may do double duty, and even though she just got worked by Shevchenko, maybe it's Andrade, right? At this point, Chukagan's number 2, and Andrade, wiped her. Murphy's number 3, Maya's number 4, Calvillo 5. We just saw that. Yeah, I mean, it might just very well be Andrade as far as flyweight, but there's a lot of fighters coming down the proverbial pike. We could have saw one this weekend in Manon Ferro. And I know that you can go back to, it's still pretty applicable, and I think it's aged quite well. Shouts to E. Spencer Kite, who is just a great podcast guest. He's on this, whether he's on this show or Sean Sheehan's Severe MMA show. We did a top 5 dark horses for this year. And we do get into some of the female fighters. I know she was mentioned. So anything I'm missing here, I'd suggest go back to that episode a couple months ago. Still very listenable, mixedmartialanalyst.com. Or go back in the applepodcast.com feeds. On that episode, there should be a video version even up on the YouTube. Daniel Tom MMA, if that suits your fancy. I think that's the last listener question here. Really appreciate you guys. This one went longer than I thought, but it's good because I have it fresh in my mind. It would have been sucky to wait all that long where you guys have been ear beaten, and then you're going to have Dan Tom ear beat you on top of the normal ear beatings on something we've already been ear beaten on before. What's new to say? And that's just really depressing. So I'm, going to get this out early. Hopefully it didn't mess me off too bad, but we'll see. Going to do a Bellator breakdown. Have written ones over there for Junkie, for Lima, and Paige. It's a Friday show, so I'm going to get to that first. Then I'll push on. I'll have a video one, I should say. I've written for, I have a written from Bellator too, but I have a written and video for the UFCs, which is, what is that shit? Johnny Walker versus Thiago Santos. Odds Checker will be back with a breakdown for the next PYM podcast. Do a grading the winners article, all that good stuff. Again, I'm glad I could help you guys cash. I know there's plenty of people doing the damn thing out there. Happy for them as well. It's nice to get reminders that I do this stuff pretty okay and help people make some money. And that means actually a lot to me to know. So thank you guys. I'll see you later in the week. And always protect your neck.